Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's start talking about our various properties. We have a number of mathematical properties, and in this case we're going to start with the distributive, associative, commutative, and identitive properties. Now, distributive is a little different in that there's only one of them, and that one distributive property has to deal with the following: 6 times 4 plus 2. Now, I could do 6 times 4 plus 2 without the distributive property. I could simply say 4 plus 2 is 6, and say 6 times 6 equals 36. And that would be true. But I also need this distributive property, because if this were not a 4, if it were an x or a y, we wouldn't be able to do the same type of trick. So what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to give away the 6 to the 4. 6 times 4, 24. But it's the distributive property, and just as if I were to come into class and give away candy bars, I can't just give a candy bar to one person. I must give it to every person. So if you give the 6 to the 4, you have to give the 6 away to the 2. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 2, however, equals 12. Now you'll notice I put a plus there because it was a plus here. So 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 2 is 12. If I take 24 plus 12, I come up with 36. And in fact, that's the whole point of these properties. Is they're methods to solving problems, and they're going to be equivalent mathematically. Now, the thing about it is, I could have done it in reverse, but that distributive property allows me to give away the 6 to each piece. Now, to give another example, if I have 4 times x plus 3, I do it algebraically rather than numerically, as we talked about. It has an x in it. 4 times x equals 4x. 4 times x. 4 times 3 equals 12. And I put a plus sign because that's the sign that was between it. You'll notice in this case I can't add the x and the 3. That doesn't work. So I have to use the distributive property in this case. And that is as simplified as I can get it. Now, the associative property works a little bit differently. If I have 6 plus 2 plus 3, and I have 6 plus 2 plus 3. Now, in this case, the two sides are exactly the same. But now, I'm going to put some parentheses in it. And in this case, they're now not the same, but they are considered equivalent expressions. Equivalent expressions. Equivalent expressions, so that I have 6 plus 2 is 8 plus 3. Well, in this case over here, I have to do the 2 plus 3 first. That's 5, so 6 plus 5. So in this case, I have 8 plus 3, that's 11, and I have 6 plus 5, that's 11. And these two are the same, so by grouping the 6 and the 2, or associating 6 with 2, so if I said known associates, or if I associate with someone, I'm going to be together with, known to be friends with, somehow grouped with. So 6 and 2 are associated. Over here, the 2 and the 3 are associated, okay? And regardless of what order we do them in, we come up with 11. Now, if we were to talk commutative property, let's do a similar problem. Commutative property says 6 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6 plus 3 plus 2. Now you'll notice it's not the parentheses that moved around. The numbers themselves actually move. Now Mr. Moore commutes to work, so I go from my home in Moweaqua, I go to Mount Zion to work. And so I'm moving from one place to the next. Well, the commutative property says the 2 and the 3, the 3 and the 2 can literally move around. So 6 plus 2 is 8 plus 3. 6 plus 3 is 9 plus 2. Well, 8 plus 3 is 11. 9 plus 2 is 11. And so you'll notice that if all I have is addition signs, I can move things around. Now, the last one is the identity property. Now, identity, well, think about words that sound the same. Identical. If something is identical, it's the same. So that's our property here. If I have 6 plus something, I want to get identically the same thing. Well, 6 plus what is 6? Well, that's 0. 6 plus 0 is 6. So the identity property is what you can add and get the exact same thing. So thus far we have the distributive property, we have the associative property. Now we're going to have this, the associative property of addition, commutative property of addition, identity property of addition. And it only works because they're all addition. Here's the thing. Let's take our commutative property. The commutative property, if I take 2 minus 3, does that equal 3 minus 2? Well, you say, well, 2 minus 3, I have 2, I take away 3, that means I'm in debt by 1. 3 take away 2, I have 3, I take away 2, I still have 1. Those two are not equal. So the commutative property of subtraction does not work. It only works if it were addition. If this were addition, it would be 2 plus 3, 3 plus 2, and those would work out. So we have these various properties. Now, we can also go on to properties that are associative and commutative and identity, but they work with multiplication. Now, if I were to do associative property of multiplication, 2 times 3 times 4 equals 2 times 3 times 4. We can all agree that those are exactly the same. However, if I put parentheses around those two and parentheses around these two, then we get something that potentially could be different. Well, 2 times 3 is 6 times 4. Yeah, over here, since these are in parentheses, I have to do those first. 3 times 4 is 12 times 2. Well, 6 times 4 is 24. 2 times 12 is also 24. And so 24 equals 24. So it works with addition, but it also works with multiplication. Now the commutative property, 2 times 3 times 4 equals 2 times 4 times 3. Well, 2 times 3 is 6 times 4 equals 2 times 4 is 8 times 3. 24 equals 24. It works again, but it does not work for division. Now for identity, 6 times what equals 6? And the obvious answer for 6 times what is not 0, because if I multiply by 0, the answer is going to be 0. But if I multiply by 1, then 6 times 1 is 6. And so we have the identity. So thus far we have the distributive property of addition, well, it's distributive property together, associative property of addition, commutative property of addition, identity property of addition, associative property of multiplication, commutative property of multiplication, and identity property of multiplication. What I need you to do is the following examples and see if you can simplify, and when we go over them in class, you're going to have to be able to tell me what properties you use. So stay tuned for your problems. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, there's a couple homework problems here. Just find the number. Here, find the number, but you need to know what property you used. Here, what property can I use to change this and make it more simple? In the same way, what property can be used here? In fact, it's going to be 2 of them together that allow you to make that one. Okay, make sure you do the quiz as well.